Tired of builds that can't keep up in high-end content? This Prismatic Hunter build is your all-in-one answer to Grandmaster Nightfalls, Master Dungeons, and even raids. What if I told you that you can stun every single champion in the game without you needing a specific weapon? Well, this build does exactly that. Destiny 2's new expansion, Edge of Fate, is right around the corner, and trust me, you want to be ready for what's coming. In this video, I'm breaking down a powerful Prismatic Hunter build designed to tear through end-game content. Whether you're tackling Grandmaster Nightfalls, Master Dungeons, or even Master Raids, this build has you covered. Best of all, you'll be able to stun every single champion type, so there's no need to worry about getting overwhelmed. So without further ado, let's dive in. The exotic armor piece you're going to want to use is the exotic Hunter Cloak called the Relevantism. And before I start explaining what perks you'll need for the Hunter Cloak, don't worry, I have an alternative exotic armor piece you can use, and it's not the Hunter Cloak. But I would like to start what perks you would need for this build. If you want to perfect this build, you're going to want to use two of these perks, but I'll show you the main one you're going to want to go first. On your first column, the main priority is Spirit of Inmost Light. This increases your ability regeneration gains by 800% for 5 seconds. But in order for you to activate it, all you would have to use is an ability. And the abilities I am using for this build is Grapple, Threaded Spike, and last but not least, Gambler's Dodge. And why I said Gambler's Dodge, because on the aspect, I am using Ascension. Let's just say you activate your Threaded Spike, it would enhance your grenade and your class ability regeneration. And if you were to use your Grapple, it will enhance your melee and your class ability. The second perk you're going to want to go for, but it's not mandatory, it's for more of a survivability, Spirit of Sotarachne. Why I said this is more of a survivability is that you would gain Woven Mail whenever you activate your grenade. And for your Prismatic subclass, you have different variations of your grenade, but in this build, I am using Grapple. So this will grant you Woven Mail for 10 seconds, and the damage reduction you'll get whenever you have Woven Mail activated is a 45% damage resist, and this also stacks with your resilience, and also the fragment that I am using for this build is Facet of Protection. And last but not least, Transcendence as well. And for this build, we have multiple variations of survivability, so if you are one of those gamers that do not have this perk, don't worry, all you will need is Spirit of Inmost Light. But if you don't have any of those perks, the other exotic armor piece you could be able to go for is this one called Gifted Conviction. This one will give you a damage resist whenever you were to activate Ascension or Tempest Strike, but you will need to jolt nearby targets. And for this build, as I mentioned, I am using Ascension. So let's head on to the Prismatic Hunter subclass. For your super, you can choose any super you like, but for me, I wanted to go for Tether, aka Shadow Shot Deadfall, for more crowd control and also increasing your damage output by 30%. You can also be able to stun overload champions with this super as well. But I do have some recommendations if you don't want to use Tether. When it comes to endgame, I would recommend going for either Golden Gun or Silence and Squall. Let's head to the abilities. I would recommend going for Gambler's Dodge just to tie it to your melee, because we are tying it to our Hunter Cloak because we have Spirit of Inmost Light, and also too, it also ties to Ascension as well. So whenever you activate Ascension, it would actually activate Gambler's Dodge as well. It didn't do that before, but now it does, and it's way better, and I can't stop using Gambler's Dodge. So what you're going to want to do is activate Threaded Spike to sever targets. Once you do, activate your Gambler's Dodge or your Ascension near enemies, and you'll be granted your melee back. So it's melee, Ascension, melee. And why I chose to put Grapple for this build is that I want to get an additional way to proc a powered melee kill to activate this fragment, Facet of Bravery, because whenever you defeat targets with a powered melee final blow, it will grant unraveling rounds to your strand weapons, and the strand weapons I am using for this build is Barrow Dyad and Scintillation. But if you're one of those gamers that don't have any of these two weapons, don't worry, you can use any strand weapon you like. But I am using this to tie it to endgame. And as you get that grapple melee hit on an enemy, you will inflict unravel to that target. For the aspects, for more of a survivability, I went with Stylish Executioner. Whenever you defeat targets that are affected by any elemental debuffs, it will grant invisibility and True Sight. True Sight is kind of like wall hacks. So for this build, on the light debuffs, you're going to inflict Jolt, Scorch, Ignitions, Suppression, Weaken, and Volatile. And for your darkness debuffs, you're going to inflict Slow, Freeze, and Unravel. The next aspect is Ascension, and here's what you need to do in order for you to activate it. You're going to want to jump into the air and activate your corresponding button. For me, it is B. Once you do, it will leap you up into the air, and as you're going upwards, it would amplify you and your allies, and it would also jolt nearby combatants. Also too, they did change how Amplified works, so now you're going to be getting a 15% damage resist as long as Amplified is activated. And you are going to be stunning overload champions with this aspect. If you want to know how you can be able to activate Transcendence, here's what you need to do. You're first going to want to generate light and darkness Transcendence energy, or you can use a kinetic weapon to generate light and dark, but in this build, we're not going to be using a kinetic weapon. So it would be under your super bar. The left side is light, the right side is dark. Once you fill both of those bars up, activate it. It would override your grenade into this prismatic grenade called Hailfire Spike. This is a trip mine that is enhanced that will scorch, ignite, slow, and freeze. So this is the main source for us in this build to stun unstoppable champions. So all you would have to do is get a direct hit with this grenade on an unstoppable or any enemy, and it would inflict all of these debuffs. So for this grenade, you can stun Overload and unstoppable champions. For the fragments, here's what you need to run for this build. The first one, more of a survivability, because remember, this ties to endgame content, and a lot of enemies hit like a truck. So you're going to want to go for a facet of protection that will grant you a 15% damage resist whenever you're surrounded by 3 or more enemies within a 15-meter radius. And if you want to increase your damage resist even further, you're going to want to activate Transcendence. So in total, you're going to be getting a 32% damage resist while Transcendent is activated. And remember, this also stacks with Amplified and also your resilience stat if you have 100 resilience. The next fragment I went with is Facet of Dawn, just to tie to our weapons to 1, increase our damage by 20%, and also have the ability to stun anti-barrier champions. This is one of the ways for us to stun anti-barriers. So as we get a powered melee hit, so that would be your threaded spike or any other powered melee that you're using for this build, it would make you radiant, but if you were to get a powered melee final blow, it would make you and your nearby allies radiant. If you are using threaded spike, all you got to worry about is hitting the target with your threaded spike, the proc radiant. The third fragment I went with is Facet of Bravery, mainly due to getting unraveling rounds with your strand weapons. So whenever you defeat a target with your powered melee, it will grant unraveling rounds to your strand weapons. So again, that would be your Barrow Dyad and the Scintillation, but you can use any other strand weapon you like. But if you do want to focus on getting volatile rounds with your energy weapon, you can change your grenade into the other grenades you like if you want to get volatile rounds. So whenever you defeat targets with a grenade, it will grant volatile rounds to your void weapons. And also too, as you were to get unraveling rounds or volatile rounds, you can be able to stun anti-barrier champions. The next fragment you're going to have to go for is Facet of Hope, because while you have an elemental buff, your class ability regenerates more quickly. And the buffs that we're going to be getting for this build is Amplified, Radiant, and Invisibility. And for your darkness buffs, you're going to be getting is Woven Mail if you are using the exotic class perk. The final fragment for this build, you can change it off if you like, but I went with Facet of Devotion just to give me a little bit more light Transcendence energy. So whenever you defeat targets afflicted by stasis or stranded debuffs, it will grant you bonus light Transcendence energy. So this fragment is like a free fragment slot. You can change it up as you like. For the weapons I went for this build is on the kinetic weapon, this exotic strand submachine gun called the Barrow Dyad that is extremely overpowered at endgame right now. And here's what you need to run. You're going to want to go for Target Lock Refit that increases the damage whenever you were to hit a target for a long time. And to tie this perk, you're going to want to go for Tainted Ambition, so your blight generated increases the longer it remains on a target, and blighted seekers burrow into the target and explode. So there are 2 perks of this. The first one is getting multi-hits to generate the energy for Barrow Dyad, and this one is just dealing sustained damage. And if you are using Taken Ambition, all you would have to do is deal sustained damage to a target to generate those blighted rounds. So it's going to be 6 blighted rounds if you were to fully charge it, and once it's fully charged, reload it, and the next time you shoot, you will shoot all of those 6 blighted seekers to those targets. Also too, it doesn't really tell you in the game, but it does increase your reload speed the higher stacks you have. For your energy weapon, you can choose any energy weapon you like, but I feel most comfortable using this Void Sidearm, which is called the Lotus Eater, and the perks you're going to want to go for is Repulsor's Brace to give you a Void Overshield whenever you defeat Void debuff targets. And in order for you to activate that, on the 4th column, you're going to want to go for Destabilizing Rounds, so whenever you defeat an enemy, it will create a Void Burst, and if that Void Burst were to hit another enemy, it will grant you volatile rounds. And for the origin trait, I would recommend going for Vanguard's Vindication, because whenever you get final blows with this weapon, it will grant a small amount of health. And for your weapon mod, this is an Adept, but you could also use Backup Mag, so this one will greatly increase your magazine. But again, if you don't have Adept version of the Lotus Eater, you could also go for this one, which is called Backup Mag. But if you really want to focus on your light Transcendence energy, you could also go for this Arc Grenade Launcher called the Cycle Pump that comes with Ambitious Assassin and Rolling Storm. That is the god roll for this grenade launcher. But if you want to take it a step further, you're going to want to get a shiny version of it to get Runneth Over, which will give you 4 shots within the mag. And for your power weapon, you can choose any power weapon you like. But again, I went with the Scintillation because we're tying this to endgame content, and you're going going to need a power hitting heavy weapon, and you could also inflict unraveling rounds because of the fragment. But here's what you need to run. On the third column, go for rewind rounds, and to increase your damage even further, on your fourth column, go for bait and switch. This will give you a 30% increase in damage for 10 seconds if you were to deal damage with all of your other equipped weapons within a short time. So that would be shooting your Barrow Dyad, shooting your Lotus Eater, and then swap to your Scintillation, shoot it once to grant the bait and switch buff. And if you don't have the adept version of the Scintillation, go for backup mag, but if you do, go for adept mag. So let's head to the stats for this build. Your main priority is to go for resilience to give you that 30% damage reduction if you have 100 resilience. And for your second priority, go for recovery, just to increase the speed at which you regain lost health. So here is how you can be able to stun every single champion in the game. Let's start with overload champions. What you're going to want to do is either activate your super to suppress them, or you can use your prismatic grenade, hailfire spike to slow them, or you could go for ascension to jolt the target. For unstoppable champions, the only way for you to stun them is using the prismatic grenade, but not to worry, for this build you're going to be getting your transcendence pretty quickly. So you're going to want to get a direct hit with this prismatic grenade on that unstoppable champion to stun them. For anti-barrier champions, you could either use this fragment, Facet of Bravery, to give your weapons volatile and unraveling rounds, or you can activate this other fragment, which is Facet of Dawn, to grant your weapons radiant for 5 seconds. Before I start explaining what you need for your armor mods, you can freely copy it if you like, but if you want to go more in depth on the build, be sure to stay tuned. For your helmet, I went with Harmonic Siphon just to tie it to the Lotus Eater, and for Strand Siphon to tie it to Barrow Dyad and Scintillation. So for those two mods, if you were to get a double kill or higher, it will drop an Orb of Power. And for the third mod, I went with Heavy Ammo Finder for my Scintillation, but if you don't really care about that, you could also go for Special Ammo Finder. Any of those two mods would work. For your gauntlets, I went with Heavy Handed. Threaded Spike really isn't good for getting kills, but it's good for severing targets, but you will focus on high leveled enemies to sever them, and the tracking for that Threaded Spike will hit red bar enemies and it would have a chance to kill them. But if you don't like this mod, you can change it. The next armor mod I went with is Focusing Strike, so it will grant class ability energy when you cause damage with your powered melee attack. So once you have your Threaded Spike and your class ability ready to be activated, the first initial Threaded Spike will not activate because your class ability is already ready to go. So what you're going to want to do is activate Threaded Spike, then activate Ascension, so you'll be getting your Threaded Spike back, and as soon as you have it back, activate your Threaded Spike again to activate this mod. The next mod I went with is Strand Loader to increase the reload speed for the Barrow Dyad. For your chest armor piece, this is mainly tying to which activity you're playing, so I'm not going to explain what I was using, so you can choose any armor mod you like for the chest. For your leg armor piece, I went with more of a damage increase to your strand weapons, so I went with Strand Weapon Surge, 2 stacks of those. So this will give you a 17% increase in damage to your strand weapons, and for more of a survivability, I went with Recuperation, which will give you 70 HP whenever you pick up an Orb of Power. And to increase the time for your armor charges, because I forgot to mention, your armor charges will decay, so instead of it being 10 seconds, it is now going to be 15 seconds because of this armor mod on the Hunter Cloak called Time Dilation. So your decaying armor charges have a longer duration. For the next 2 mods are tying to your class ability, and I went with Reaper. Shortly after using your class ability, your next weapon final blow spawns an Orb of Power, and I also went with Powerful Attraction. If you enjoyed this Prismatic Hunter build and you're hyped for Edge of Fate, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. We're very close to hitting 8,000 subscribers, and I seriously appreciate all of the support. I do stream over on Twitch and Kick, and I'm live Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday at 9 a.m. PST. If you guys are free or want to chat, I'll be over there.